In today's show, we know one thing about the future ownership of the Portland Trail Blazers. It will not be Phil Knight. Uncle Phil releases a statement saying he's not interested in purchasing the pinwheels. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we're talking Phil Knight. We know one thing is for certain. He will not be the next owner of the Portland Trail Blazers. He made that clear in a statement today as reported by The Athletic. We'll get into that and what it means. I've got a little reporting to share with you about relocation worries as we continue to parse out what's happening with the Blazers as they remain for sale in the extremely early stages of the process. Plus, we'll talk NBA Combine after the first 2 days in Chicago. Who stood out? What do we know? Who's what height? Who measures what barefoot? And how long are their arms? We'll get into all of that to close the show. Let's start with Phil Knight. This is a big deal because I think this was the presumptive owner of the Portland Trail Blazers for many. My guess, and I don't think I shared this publicly on the show, but I shared it on another radio program I was on. Shout out to Jeff Norcross. Just the fact that Phil Knight didn't already own the Blazers made me feel like it was unlikely he was going to own the Blazers in the future. But he released a statement today to The Athletic that reads the following. 5 years ago, when I was a younger man, I had great interest in being part of the Portland Trail Blazers franchise. However, at my current age, I can confirm I no longer have interest in acquiring the team. That's Phil Knight of Nike fame, an 87-year-old who made serious overtures to try to purchase the team in 2022 and continued making those, according to the Wall Street Journal, sort of a pretty aggressive pursuits of the team into 2023, into at least the first half of 2023 before he was, summarily shut down at several occasions by the Allen estate. And now, as was made public this week, the Allen estate is officially for sale. And there was this, assumption, I think, for many, in our orbit, Blazer land, that Phil was just going to be the guy who buys the team. He has all this money. He's interested. He's deeply, he's deeply connected to the state, et cetera, et cetera. Doesn't look like it. Right? No longer have interest in acquiring the team, Uncle Phil says. That's, there are plenty of other owners out there, like unknown billionaires in the world, that could purchase the team and put the Blazers on a great path. But the pitch for Phil, the pitch for Uncle Phil, for Phil Knight specifically, was a deep connection to Oregon, to Portland, and to the community. In fact, according to the Wall Street Journal, written by Rachel Bachman in June of 2023, Knight's pitch to the Blazers, among other things, was about investing in Portland, like investing here. Maybe the way that you could put it is civic pride and trailblazerdom. Maybe that's the way I'll put it. You can put it any way you want. I'll try that again. Civic pride and trailblazerdom, if you will. And you can make your own decisions. But this is from reporting from Rachel Bachman's story in the Wall Street Journal in 2023. I'm going to read you a quote here. In several separate phone conversations with Burt Cold, people familiar with the situation say Alan Smolinski and Phil Knight. That's Alan Smolinski is the minority owner of the Dodgers, who was part of Phil Knight's ownership team. Laid out their vision to keep the Blazers in Portland forever. They would invest in the team to make it a championship contender. They would boost the fan experience off the court by improving the area around the arena, according to people familiar with their thinking. Like this was like part of the pitch was, I'm going to buy the team. I'm never going to move them. They'll be rooted here forever, and I'm going to invest a lot of money in the immediate area surrounding the stadium. And like the immediate area surrounding the Moda Center sucks. Like that's like one of the biggest downsides of the arena experience, period. Just like of the game experience as a fan, there's just like not enough stuff to do within walking distance. And the Allen Estate has either been uninterested or unwilling to make like the sort of major purchases that would allow them to do that. Obviously, that would be like a major real estate play. It's just like not something they've been interested in. But prior to that story coming out in June of 2023, Phil Knight had already put his money where this story was going to be. Maybe not his mouth, but where this internet ink was going to be. In April of 2023, and that story came out a couple months later in June, Phil Knight had pledged $400 million to the Rebuild Albina project, which is like a commitment to revitalize the areas of inner north and northeast Portland. The Albina neighborhood historically had been the black neighborhood due to redlining and America's like long history of racist housing policies to keep it pretty blunt. It had been the sort of epicenter of Black Portland, and then that community was systematically displaced over the course of several decades with construction of I-5, with construction of the freaking arenas, with the Rose Quarter and Legacy Emmanuel Hospital. First the hospital, then the arenas, or then the Rose Quarter, or excuse me, then the Rose Garden. So like Phil Knight has already pledged $400 million and started working with local civic leaders to revitalize specifically the area right around the arena. This is who you want, right? Because I think the concerns about this team, like the concerns about new ownership, are, there's some basketball stuff, right? Like, are they going to do are they going to trade 1 million draft picks and like go all in too early and like manage the team terribly? Are they going to fire like 6 coaches over the course of 9 seasons and like 5 GMs over the course of a decade, right? Like there's some like meddling basketball stuff you worry about the new owner, but I think there is an overarching concern just talking, like reading the internet and talking. Now, I don't think my actually immediate friends believe this in any way because they're smart, but like I think there is a concern. Not all my immediate friends are smart. If you're listening and you're one of my immediate friends, you're obviously dumb. But like there is a concern out there in sort of Blazer fandom based on my read of things. I don't think this has really shown up on my email inbox, but reading Reddit and seeing some comments on my YouTube channel, the people are worried that the team's going to leave. People are worried. And so the question as it relates to Phil Knight is like, he was someone deeply committed to the community. So it's like, the question is, if the Blazers land in the hands of someone who shares a similar vision for the franchise and their relationship to the city, or do they land somewhere else? So I tried to do a little reporting about this today. I will say that there is not a lot of no one's going to come forth on the record for me, right? Like I'm not going to be able to bring anyone on the show that's going to be able to sit down and like give us the here's how it works type of reporting on the sale process. In fact, I think I may have exhausted all of my attempts to like really get real information. But here's what I can tell you about relocation as it pertains to the Blazers based on conversations I've had. And I'll just say this up front. This is according to sources familiar with the sale process. So what I'm going to tell you is sourced reporting. There's no specific language in the trust from Paul Allen as it relates to the sale that would negate relocation. There is no specific relocation language within that. So the sale process is not bound by some legal document that says the team can't move or the team can't move, blah, blah, blah. There's not that. But as I understand it, all parties involved would prefer that the Blazers remain in Portland. Prefer. That is not a deep commitment. When the Allen Estate released their press release, as first pointed out by Bill Oram of the Oregonian, there's no language about the commitment to keeping the team in the city. Adam Silver hasn't jumped in and said, like, we really want the team to stay in Portland. In fact, I think Adam Silver, when he has discussed the sale of the team in the past, has been a little wishy-washy. Yeah, we'd like that to happen. Shrug. But as I understand it, based on the folks I've talked to that are familiar with the process, is that the Allen Estate would prefer that the Blazers stay in Portland. The NBA does not is not particularly invested in relocation. They want expansion first, relocation second, and so they'll expand. They want to expand before they would get to relocation. So the Allen estate would prefer the Blazers stay in Portland. The NBA would prefer the Blazers stay in Portland, and certainly the like leftover remaining portions of the Blazers franchise would prefer the team stay in Portland. That's according to sources familiar with the sale process. There's no specific language that's going to limit them, but everyone involved in the process, that is their goal. The idea is to find a buyer that is invested locally. The problem is like finding a quote unquote local buyer is not particularly easy because this isn't a city here. Like Portland has its problems, but Portland also has, some wealthy folks, but it isn't like, it isn't one of these major metropolises with, here are our local 24 billionaires, right? Like the most obvious local big money group, and I've mentioned them in the past, is the Raj Group. That's the group who owns the Thorns and just bought the WNBA team. They're the Bethals, the brother and sister duo, the Bethals. And part of that ownership group is Tim Boyle of Columbia Sportswear. Tim Boyle's a small-time billionaire. He's got, according to Forbes, a Forbes article I read posted in 2025, posted this year, his net worth is projected around $2 billion, just shy of it. That's not NBA money. The Blazers are going to sell for like $3.5 or $4 billion. And one of the challenges here with the Blazers sale is that you are not buying, like when the Hornets sold for their valuation, they were buying a majority stake. So you didn't have to fork over full $3 billion. You had to fork over 54%, or you had to buy 54% of the shares or 57% of the shares to get the controlling stake, right? That was the purchase, and so it was a valuation for the purchase. For the Blazers, you're buying the whole thing, so it does somewhat limit the buyer pool. Well, I think the most obvious local money is the Raj Group. I'm not sure that they have NBA money to be an outright buyer. Do they have money to be a majority owner, controlling owner? Maybe they could put that together, but that would involve multiple ownership entities. So like if you're talking about who could purchase it, I think you're talking about probably someone outside of our immediate community, and you're hoping that person is invested in it. Again, I do not think the team is likely to move. I do not think that should be a major concern, but it is not nothing. I would not dismiss it outright. I would not say it's impossible. I would say it is an unlikely and non-preferred, based on the reporting I'm sharing with you here, a non-preferred scenario by those involved. That doesn't preclude it from happening. It just makes it, it wouldn't be anyone's first choice. This is not Howard Schultz selling to Clay Bennett to get this team right on out of there to Oklahoma City. It is not that. And we will see as sort of things progress. But I imagine when we hear about it, the way news breaks in the NBA is like, we'll hear about it when it's sold. We won't get the piecemeal reporting. And quite frankly, I am not connected at the billionaire level to bring that to you. I've done as best I can over the last 2 days to plug you in. And all I know is like, the team thinks the sale process is going to go, into 2026, no problem, and like well into early 2026, and they hope that the preference is that the team stays. That's what I know. Let's talk NBA Combine, because we got more to talk about. The Blazers are going to make some draft picks here in 5 weeks. Let's talk about them. Join me in that second segment, won't ya? Before we get there, though, let's talk WayFair. Days are getting longer, weather's getting warmer, and people are spending more time outside. And I'm people, which means that if it's a perfect time to refresh your outdoor space, because it's a perfect time to refresh my outdoor space as well. Whether you're working with a big backyard or a small balcony, WayFair has everything you need to make it feel more like you. WayFair's got a massive selection of outdoor essentials, which makes it easy to transform any space into your ideal summer setup. From comfy conversation sets to sleek dining tables and outdoor decor, they've got it all at the prices that fit your budget. We are in the process of making our backyard the place we never want to leave. And WayFair has helped us achieve that goal while fitting within a budget. So we're not building someone else's dream backyard. We're building the dream backyard that we can afford. You got a mix of styles. It's super easy to find the pieces that match your vibe, and you won't have to spend a fortune. Plus, delivery is free and hassle-free, even on the big stuff. So shop a huge selection of outdoor furniture this summer. Get outside with WayFair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WayFair.com. WayFair.com. WayFair, every style, every home. All right. The NBA Combine started this week in Chicago. And let me start here with a little bit of a caveat. I don't think I put a ton of stock into all of the parts of the NBA Combine. So I just don't care too much about a dude shooting unguarded practice jumpers in a gym. If a dude can shoot really well, and we know that because he's played, high-level basketball in front of us for a couple years in college, and they shoot well at the Combine, great. If they've shot really well for a couple years in college and they shoot terribly at the Combine, I'm just much more concerned about the college tape. And if a guy who can't shoot, and we've seen them that they can't shoot, and they take 25 jump shots in an empty gym and they hit 19 of them, and you say, ooh, that's 25 jump shots. I do not care. I do not care about it. You can care. I'm just saying this is not the type of thing that gets the old juices flowing for me in terms of the shooting stuff. But I do think the measurements matter. I really do. I think how big you are matters because while guys can play above their height, of their standing heights, and wingspan can sort of overcome some of your shortness, you can never stop being 6'2". If that's I think that was sort of the Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum problem, is that sometimes they really brought it on defense, but they weren't particularly good on defense to begin with. So even when they played their absolute best, they were just small. You can never overcome it. I think that's some of the Anthony Simons challenges now, and to some extent, I think that happens up across the roster, right? You're just as big as you are. I think Jabari Walker is a good example of this. Dude plays big. He's 6'7". If he was 6'11", he'd be a totally different player. He'd be he'd be making a bunch of money as a backup center for a long time, right? It's just different. But I do think that matters. I do think height and wingspan matters. That stuff I'll pay attention to. The other stuff, I'm not going to get too hyped about the cone drill. I am old enough to remember when Cody Zeller was an absolute physical freak at the Combine in 2013. That's a long time ago now. That's 12 years ago. But I remember it well. He went 4th overall. Dude was a really good athlete in college. He was a very, very good athletic testing at the Combine. And he was totally fine. He was a totally fine NBA player. And I think you can get too caught up this time of year with little data points. And I try not to do that. But I do think there's stuff to know, and I do think there's been some fun measurement stuff and some names to know. The Blazers only have one pick in the draft currently. They can probably get back into a second round pick, and maybe they will. But I'm not really going to talk too much about second rounders over the next month, and because the Blazers are unlikely to, if they end up with a second round pick, they're not going to get it until draft night, right? They're very unlikely to make a trade for a second round pick in the coming weeks. It'll happen on draft night. Oh shoot! All of a sudden, the Blazers are picking 47th. Cool, and we'll get excited about it. I think that'll be fun. But the Blazers are at 11. There's guys who can climb, but I think there's some guys just outside the Blazers range at 11 who have had a really good week at the Combine. I want to start focusing there. The big riser. And this is thanks to reporting from a friend of the program, Raphael Barlow, host of Locked On NBA Big Board and the publisher of the NBA Big Board newsletter. Go subscribe to it. This is a great time of year to get all your draft intel, and Raph is the best. He's at the Combine right now, getting insights and bringing you the latest stuff, and also some reporting from the team over at ESPN, Jonathan Givony, Jeremy Wu et al. They have Jeff Borzello. They have some other people on the squad, but Wu and Givony for the most part. But the big name that seems to be rising, but that showed up in Raf's reporting as well as on ESPN, is Cedric Coward. Cedric Coward is a fun player. First of all, Northwest Conference own, started his collegiate career at Willamette, a D3 standout. And before we get too far into this, shout out to listener Jamal. Listener Jamal sent me an email 10 days ago, way before the combine, way before the draft type, way before any of y'all got wind of this. Maybe not any of y'all. I don't know who I'm talking to necessarily, but many got wind of this. And Jamal said, check this out. Dude with Willamette's own background, getting some buzz. And I said, Cedric Coward is committed to Duke. He's transferred from Washington State. He started from Willamette, Washington State, and got hurt, but he's transferred from Washington State to Duke. And I said, don't send me the links about Duke kids. How dare you? But Cedric Coward, shout out to Jamal. Cedric Coward's been hooping, and the measurables popped. 6'5" and a quarter barefoot with a 7'2" and a quarter wingspan. That's +7 wingspan and an 8'10" standing reach. Dude is long. Shot pretty darn well in the shooting drills too, particularly the off the dribble stuff. But the measurables is really what stands out for me. He's going to be a first round pick. Will he be there? Is 11 too early to take him? Maybe, but he's a fun name to know. Another name in that range that I think is a little probably too early to take him is Yaxel Lindeborg. He's transferred from UAB and going to Michigan. He's committed to Michigan, and it sounds like he may go back to Michigan based on the reporting as of today. And Raphael and ESPN both reported that the buzz is kind of a will he won't he. But he measured 6'8.5" with a 7'4" wingspan, so he's more power forward-y size, but that 7'4" wingspan, 9'10" standing reach. He'll probably play some center in the NBA, but he's like skilled enough to play some face-up power forward-y stuff, and I think that's kind of the type of player that the Blazers need. He's probably not at 11, and he might end up back in college if he doesn't get a guarantee, but he's a guy who's climbing up draft boards and is likely a first-round pick, but will he get a strong enough first-round pick to stay, or will he go ba 'to college and say, well, I can be freaking the 12th pick in the draft next year and go back? But those are two risers, guys. And Cedric Coward did not play in the 5-on-5. The way the NBA Combine works is that everyone who attends has to do measurements and has to do shooting work on the court and some of the agility stuff, unless you have a medical excuse. But if you do not have to participate in the 5-on-5 scrimmages. And so a lot of the best players, or even just like this sort of guaranteed to be first round picky guys, they're like, nah, I'm not going to scrimmage, certainly not going to like get shown up, right? Like I'm not going to have a bad 5-on-5. But climbers, guys who like are on the edge and want to like either like move from undrafted to the second round to first round, or like raise their stock and don't have the strong guarantees, they play. And Lindeborg played, and he was hooping. He had according to ESPN, had a really nice first day of 5-on-5 work, and is in a position. He told ESPN that he's still 50-50 on whether he's going to go back to college. Again, I don't think the Blazers would take him at 11, but he's a name to know because he's climbing. Those are two names to know. Some other names to know is another name that like everybody likes in my particular world, because I've got a lot of fans with Israeli connections, is Danny Wolf from Michigan. Danny Wolf measured bigger than I thought he would be, and I think that's meaningful. 6'10 and a half. So like, a true 6'11 or true 6'10, 7'2 and a quarter wingspan, 9'1 standing reach. He played like weird on-ball creator point guardy stuff at his size at Michigan. Like he's kind of like, got a little Kyle Anderson with a jump shot vibe to him. I didn't realize that he was like from suburban Chicago and went to Yale before he went to Michigan, and that he was just like he become an Israeli citizen, or like nativized citizen and played for the Israeli national team. I thought he was straight up from Israel based on what everyone was telling me, and my Israeli listeners were telling me. I didn't realize he was a Chicago kid. He's a Midwestern American, 7-footer, went to Yale, but I would say that Wolf maybe didn't have the best other measurables in terms of, it didn't have the best shooting performance, but the size, if you're like, that's big. That's big with his skill set, and being that big with what he does is pretty intriguing. Some other things to know, including Jace Richardson. He is too small, and some names in the Blazers range that I think have some measurables that we can discuss. Join me in that third segment, won't ya? Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Jace Richardson was once someone who I thought could be an interesting fit for the Blazers, right? Because he was listed at Michigan State as 6'5", and I saw him play one full game and parts of a couple others, and it's like, oh, he's got a little off the dribble juice. He can shoot. That's what the Blazers need. The guard depth and some shooting. That's pretty interesting. He measured 6 foot, just a shade over 6 foot barefoot. Not 6 foot and 1/2 inch barefoot. That's too small. Unless he's a pure point guard, that's too small. I think that's not like, if you could play, you could play, but there is some limitations in the league about size, and I think that's a problem for Jace Richardson from Michigan State. That's an issue. Some other names to know in the Blazers range. Derek Queen. The big man from Maryland, measured 6'9" and a quarter, 7 foot wingspan, 9'1" standing reach. Good numbers for Queen. If he's probably not like, that's not really big center height, but he was never going to be like this rim protecting center. That's not what he projects as. Like, his skill is like the sort of post creativity, the skill as a passer, his feel on the offensive end. The face-up game, maybe you think he can be a shooter down the line if you're a believer. It wasn't that he was going to be this like beast in at the rim. If he was a little bigger, you'd feel a little bit better, because like size is just like being big and in the way is meaningful. But I think 6'9" and a quarter is an okay number for Derek Queen. I wouldn't be too worried about that. Carter Bryant, the young wing from Arizona, he measured 6'6" and a half. That's pretty good size, barefoot. At 6'11" and 3/4 wingspan, so it's like it's basically 7 foot wingspan and 8'10" standing reach. Those are pretty good numbers. I'm probably not as intrigued by Carter Bryant, but I do get why other folks are. I think he's got, and that frame, NBA frame, that's real. Some other names to know here. A name that everybody likes is Rasheed Fleming from St. Joe's. 6'8" and a quarter, measured barefoot, 7'5" wingspan. He's got long arms. That's 7'5" and a quarter wingspan, 9'1" and a half standing reach. Long arms. He's, if Rasheed Fleming can shoot and he's that big, I think you've got like a baseline of a pretty decent NBA player. I wonder, and just sort of based on my discussions with a friend of the program, Raphael Barlow, it's like Fleming's ultimate upside and somewhat tendency to kind of like just like not be a big part of the action make me worried that what he scales up to in the NBA, like you're already seeing, it's like, oh yeah, 3-and-D, but what's the upside? He's a 3-and-D guy. Like, he's an off-ball defender, shooter type. Like, that's fun player, and that might be a really effective player. And quite frankly, the Blazers could use a dude who's like that size with that length who can shoot. That's like a position of need for sure. It's just like, is that... You have to make a decision at some point about whether you are going to take a swing for highest upside or going to say the best player available is a player who can help us now, and et cetera, et cetera. I will say that like the sort of like older, low, high floor prospects are never the guys that I'm that excited about. So if you are, right on. Some of this is just like this draft time of year, because I haven't seen these dudes play a bunch and I'm still kind of getting my feet under me with these guys. Like, I'll have some personal preferences, some personal biases, but if you think completely differently, I'm cool with it. There's just like, I'm not even going to argue. That's, oh, cool. You like him better than me? Cool. Right on. And that's how I feel about Fleming. I think a lot of people are super into him, and I think he's, I get the appeal. Jeremiah Fears, point guard from Oklahoma. He probably won't be available at 11. I think he's pretty unlikely. Queen, Bryant, Fleming, they're all going to they're likely to be on the board when the Blazers are, or at least going to be right in the Blazers range, like, in that 9 through 14 range. Fears probably go earlier, but if he was there, he's intriguing. Measured 6'2" and a half, a 6'5" and a quarter wingspan, and 8'2" standing reach. Like, he's just a a beast. He gets himself to where he wants to go on the court, and was a guy who was like, oh, maybe he'll stay a couple years in college, to be like, he's the 8th pick in the NBA draft, and he reclassified and moved up a year. He's a fun player, and at 6'2.5" is not super big. Like, he's not a gigantic point guard, but that's not tiny. Like, he's bigger than Jace Richardson, who's probably a 2. That's decent size, but he's like he's a 1, right? Like, he was obviously a 1 to begin with. So, but if you were like, maybe he'll be a big guard and you can play like multiple wall handlers, 6'2.5" barefoot is best point guard size. Kasparas Jakučiūnas from Illinois measured 6'4" and 3/4 barefoot. So he's about 6'5", 6'7" and 3/4 wingspan, 6'8" wingspan. So not deeply long arms, 8'4" standing reach. But that's big though. 6'5" and barefoot those are good numbers for his appeal, right? Is that he's a big, creative playmaking guard, and at 6'5", you feel like you can play both 1 and 2 very comfortably. There's questions about who he can guard in the league, but like in terms of physical frame, he's got it. Jakučiūnas is I go back and forth whether I'm excited about him or whether I'm concerned about him, but I like the idea of him a lot. I like the idea of a big guard who can pass a lot. I'll have to watch a little bit more of him to see whether I like the reality of Jakučiūnas as much as I like the idea of him. I think those are names to know, combine stuff. And obviously, as we'll get some more 5-on-5 action on Thursday and wrap ups from the combine and some more reports from folks who are on the scene. And I'll share some thoughts with you about the players there. Real quick, just because I have to, my guy Drake Powell from UNC had a monster day in terms of getting measured. 6'5.5" barefoot, 7-foot wingspan, 8'7" standing reach, the best no-step vertical at 37.5 inches, the best max, running vertical leap at 43 inches. He was in the top 5 in the 3/4 court sprint. He was really good in the shuttle run, really good in the pro lane drill, and he shot bricks in the shooting drill. Drake Powell's a second-round pick, maybe sneaks into the very end of the first round. He's going to be able to defend at an NBA level. Go Tar Heels. That's just for me. I snuck that at the end of the episode. That's for me and Ian. If you're listening, shout out to you. Be sure to share that with you. Share that one with your people. Shout out to the homie Sam Hunt and all of Asheville. In any case, that's the end of the program. We're going to talk more draft stuff tomorrow. Leif Thulin of Locked on NBA Big Board is going to join the program, and we are going to talk all things Blazers targets at 11 from opinions of a real draft expert, not an amateur like me. That is going to do it for today's program. Come back for tomorrow's show, and then 5 more next week. That's what we do, 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.